Chapter 31 Yuuto Endo Who Defected. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Mingming himself had just taken out a Konoha Jonin not long ago, showing some serious power. He was not about to let this go. Not a chance. Rage and frustration burned in Yuuto Endo's chest, feeling like sulfuric acid was eating him alive. The pain was almost unbearable. He jammed his kunai into the head of a dead sand ninja, twisting it violently to mush the brains. It was the only way he could vent his anger and despair. "Hey, what the hell are you doing?" A sand ninja noticed and barked at him. Endo Yuuto looked up and recognized him as Oyasu, another Jonin on the team. Oyasu stared at Endo Yuuto, waiting for an explanation. Endo Yuuto met his gaze for a second, then quickly looked away, head down, resuming the search of the dead sand ninja's body without a word. Oyasu was ready to explode, but seeing that Endo Yuuto wasn't making any suspicious moves, and knowing they were at a critical moment in their retreat, he reluctantly nodded. Scoffed, and turned to leave. Hearing Oyasu's footsteps fade away, Endo Yuuto looked up, his eyes filled with resentment and malice. "Yeah, by any metric, he's a loser who couldn't hold a candle to me. He probably stayed far away from the fighting, or he would have been dead. The coward who sucks up to superiors and wouldn't dare say boo if I slapped him, now he's trying to lecture me. That's it. I'm done with this dump of a sand village." Endo Yuuto kicked the ground, haphazardly covering up the sand ninja's body, and made a decision. The sand ninjas were moving fast, putting distance between themselves and the Konoha ninjas as they headed towards the border. The two Konoha ninjas on lookout duty started to relax a little. Without thinking, Endo Yuuto found himself under a large tree. Lying beneath the tree were the bodies of two Konoha ninjas. One was a kid, couldn't have been more than 10, clutching a kunai, eyes squeezed shut, face frozen in fear. On top of the kid was an adult male, charred black, with a gaping hole in his back that nearly pierced through to his chest, and reeked of burnt flesh. Oh! Endo Yuuto suddenly perked up, walking closer, sniffing the air like a connoisseur enjoying the smell of burnt meat. "Isn't this my masterpiece? He 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 he." Endo Yuuto muttered, his face flushed with excitement as he rolled the corpses over, relishing the sight of their demise. The bodies were Kimura Shu and Marino Ibixi. If this Jonin hadn't insisted on protecting the runt, things might have gone differently. Taking out a Jonin with a single fireball jutsu is a sweet deal. Endo Yuuto thought, a sardonic smile twisting his lips. What a chump. He throws his life away, and the kid still kicks the bucket in his arms. What a pointless death. He 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 he. A ninja should be a tool, devoid of emotion, blood, or tears. He he he. Endo Yuuto giggled, face contorted in a grimace. Suddenly, his smile vanished, replaced by a dark look. Endo Yuuto remembered that he was a tool, too. A discarded tool. Ah, crap, that the more he thought about it, the angrier he got. Endo Yuuto kicked Kimura Shu's body off, revealing Ibixi, who had been shielded in his arms. Ibixi's shirt was ripped, his upper body scorched black. His skin and muscle were turned inside out, giving off a disgusting smell of cooked meat. Heh, teacher really had your back, huh? Aside from a few minor scrapes, Endo Yuuto couldn't find any major injuries on Ibixi and sneered. Tough, you wouldn't have lasted a second against me. Muttering to himself, Endo Yuuto's eyes widened. The chest of the corpse in front of him was still rising and falling slowly. The jostling of Kimura's body being moved had seemingly stirred the boy, and he was slowly trying to open his eyes. Holy crap! He's alive! Endo Yuuto shouted, his eyes gleaming like he'd struck gold, a crazy grin spreading across his face as he hoisted Ibixi onto his shoulder. This fresh little Konoha ninja is mine now. Ha 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 ha! The shout caught the attention of both the sand and Konoha ninjas. The Konoha Chunin on lookout duty immediately moved closer. Oyasu frowned, glaring at Endo Yuuto and demanded. Endo! Put down the Konoha ninja now and don't do anything stupid. Stupid? He 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 he. Looking at the little brother who he used to bully and now dared to yell at him, Endo Yuuto's eyes went cold. Are you telling me what to do? Endo Yuuto spat on the ground, pulled out a kunai, and scratched his forehead with it. I'm out. This tasty morsel is all mine. Ha 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 ha. Endo Yuuto cackled, tossing the kunai behind him without looking, performed the body flicker technique, jumped up, and ran off. Chase him. The two Konoha Chunin who were on lookout immediately followed. Just as they were about to catch up to Endo Yuuto, they saw the kunai he had thrown and froze. Fall back. The two Konoha Chunin retreated immediately, and Oyasu, who was about to grab Endo Yuuto, pulled back as well. The kunai thrown by Endo Yuuto had an explosive tag attached. Boom! The explosive tag detonated. Nobody was hurt, but when the smoke cleared, Endo Yuuto had vanished into the woods. It's Ibixi. Hearing Endo Yuuto's shout, Kakugi saw the familiar figure being carried away. Kakugi recognized Ibixi in a flash, the Umino Ibixi he'd been worried about. Kakugi guessed that Ibixi must have been badly injured and passed out, allowing Endo Yuuto to kidnap him. Kakugi immediately broke from the team, but Endo Yuuto was already gone. Damn it! Kakugi punched a tree trunk in frustration. Yitsang gently set down the Blackwood Falcon on his back and approached the pursuing Konoha ninja. Looking at Narashikaku, the leader of the Konoha team, he said. As you can see, this was an accident. Endo Yuuto is a rogue ninja. His actions have nothing to do with the Sand Village. Yitsang took a deep breath, seemingly making a difficult decision. If Konoha wants to go after him, feel free to capture Yuuto Endo and deal with him as you see fit. With that, Yitsang gave Narashikaku a complicated look. If he had a choice, Yitsang wouldn't be explaining himself to the enemy. But the situation was what it was, and it wasn't worth risking the lives of all the sand ninjas present over one rogue ninja. As for any information or secret techniques Endo Yuuto might leak after being captured, he couldn't worry about that now. There was no way Konoha would just stand by and let the sand ninjas capture the rogue ninja. Even if the sand ninjas captured Endo Yuuto, how could Konoha be sure they would return Umino Ibixi safe and sound? Therefore, Yitsang simply offered him up to Konoha. The only good thing was that Endo Yuuto had a bad reputation and had never been a part of Tsunagekyu's inner circle. He didn't have any truly valuable secrets. Yes, I understand. Narashikaku nodded to Yitsang. Chapter 32 Ready to go. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Narashikaku figured that was about as good as they were going to get at that moment. Yitsang sighed in relief, feeling the tension leave him. He turned to leave, paused after a few steps, and glanced at Kakugi. He couldn't help himself, he had to stare down Kakugi. Umino Kakugi, next time we meet, I will kill you. Yitsang's eyes were ice, a dangerous smirk playing on his lips. Ah, I'll be looking forward to it. Kakugi nodded, serious as a heart attack. Ha! Talk tough, kid. Yitsang scoffed, slung the Blackwood Falcon over his back, and took off. The sand ninja were evacuating in waves, and Yitsang hung back, making sure everyone knew he was watching them. The Konoha ninja kept their eyes on the retreating sand ninja until they were completely gone. Kakugi and his team huddled together, muttering something, but Umino Iruka kept shaking his head, looking embarrassed. Once the sand ninja were out of sight, Kakugi stood up with a whoop and headed straight for Yuhi. Makoto, Komatetsu and Kankata hot on his heels. Captain Yuhi, please let me and my teammates go after that traitor sand ninja, Endo Yuuto, and rescue Umino Ibixi. Yuhi Makoto gave Kakugi a confused look, while Umino Iruka waved his hands frantically, looking even more flustered. My son's getting too old for me to handle. Seeing this, Yuhi Makoto gave Kakugi a serious look. Umino Kakugi, you need to understand that even injured, your target is still a full-fledged jounin from the Sand Village. Plus, we just came out of a brutal fight, so you and your teammates aren't exactly in top shape. Even though you took down Kuroki Hayabusa, a well-known sand ninja jounin, sending you on this mission is still incredibly dangerous. My gut tells me we should head back to camp ASAP and let them handle it. I'm sorry, Captain Yuhi, Kakugi interrupted, getting more agitated by the second. But with all due respect, by the time the camp gets around to it, Umino Ibixi might already be dead, considering his condition. A breeze swept through, carrying the coppery scent of blood from the battlefield. Kakugi's eyes were intense as he stared at Yuhi Makoto. his expression determined. Yuhi's face flushed, then hardened. She went quiet for a moment, then locked eyes with Kakugi. I assume you remember what our team's mission is. Kakugi nodded without hesitation. Deliver supplies to the Konoha ninja army camp in the land of rivers. Then, Genin Umino Kakugi, you will continue with that mission. Yuhi Makoto's tone was sharp and final. She turned and walked away. Kakugi stubbornly watched her go, ignoring his father's frantic winks. He took a deep breath, and then shouted. So, it's okay to just abandon your comrades for the sake of the mission. The air went dead silent. Yuhi Makoto spun around, her eyes filled with disbelief. He stormed back, grabbed Kakugi by the collar, slammed him against a tree, and growled, keeping his voice low. Kid, can't you see how many supplies we have to haul and how many people we've lost? The camp is in deep trouble. We need to get those supplies there now. Even you three genin are crucial to the team right now. Do you understand? That he shoved Kakugi against the tree again, then spun around and stalked off, shooting Umino Iruka a withering glare. Kakugi leaned against the tree, head down, not saying a word. Kakugi-san. Kenka looked at Kakugi, worried, and gently tugged at his sleeve. Kakugi stayed quiet, his head still down. Umino Iruka and Komatetsu came over to comfort him, but Kakugi wouldn't say anything. The team started clearing the battlefield, collecting the bodies of the Konoha ninja and gathering the remaining supplies. Yuhi Makoto was directing the formation, and even the Ino Shikacho trio were pitching in. It was like everyone had forgotten about Kakugi. Except for Nara Shikaku, who was watching him with amusement. Kakugi suddenly straightened up, marched over to Yuhi Makoto, and shouted. Captain Yuhi, I'm asking you again, let me go after the traitor Sand Ninja, Endo Yuuto, and rescue Marino Ibixi. That the place went silent again. Everyone stared at Kakugi, shocked. He met their gaze, his eyes unwavering. After a long pause, Yuhi Makoto gave Kakugi a helpless look and sighed. He put a hand on Kakugi's shoulder, knelt down, and looked him in the eye. Aren't you even a little bit afraid of dying, kid? Kakugi smirked and pointed out the obvious. I chopped off Endo Yuuto's hand. Oh, you little punk. Yuhi Makoto was almost smiling. He reached out and ruffled Kakugi's hair. Kakugi didn't resist, he just grinned, waiting for Yuhi Makoto's answer. Yuhi stared at Kakugi, his eyes a little red around the edges. He spoke slowly, carefully choosing his words. Given the situation, there's no way I can officially order you to do this. If you insist on going after him, it'll have to be as a deserter. Even if you manage to rescue your comrade, you'll still face punishment when you get back. You sure you're ready for that? Absolutely. Kakugi grinned, his teeth flashing. Nara Shikaku crossed his arms and leaned against a tree, watching with fascination. He chuckled, shook his head, and jerked his chin at Yamanaka Haichi. Yamanaka Haichi nodded, put up a hand to tell Kakugi to hold on, and hurried over to Yuhi Makoto. The two of them huddled together for a quick chat. Kakugi watched them curiously, wondering what they were saying. A few moments later, Yamanaka Haichi came over, gave Kakugi a smile, and said gently. I'm Yamanaka Haichi, the squad leader of the interrogation unit at the Konoha ninja camp in the land of rivers. I'm giving you a mission. At the word mission, Kakugi snapped to attention. Genin Umino Kakugi, I hereby order you to pursue the rogue ninja Endo Yuuto of the Sand Village. No matter what, dead or alive, you need to bring back Endo Yuuto's head in one piece. The mission is tentatively classified as B rank. You will depart immediately after receiving the mission. Yamanaka Haichi looked at Kakugi with a warm smile, his eyes filled with encouragement. Yes, sir. Kakugi replied, loud and clear. Umino Iruka came over, took out a few soldier pills and a detonating tag from his pouch, and handed them to Kakugi. He looked at Kakugi, pleased but also conflicted. Finally, he clapped his son on the shoulder, said, don't get yourself killed, and turned to leave. Kenka also pulled out 2 hemostatic pills and 2 blood-boosting pills and gave them to Kakugi, and then Komatetsu stepped up. Komatetsu grinned proudly at Kakugi, bit his thumb, went through a quick series of hand signs, and pressed his palm to the ground. Summoning jutsu, a small, snow-white, and impossibly cute ninja dog appeared in front of them. This is Yukimaru, my prize-winning tracking dog. I'm letting you borrow him for now. So. Komatetsu wiggled his nose and raised his eyebrows at Kakugi. This is a huge help. Kakugi said, looking surprised. He was worried about the tracking. With the ninja dog, it was like having GPS. But when did you even get a ninja dog? Kakugi asked, a bit confused. Well. Komatetsu rubbed his nose, looking a little embarrassed. He quickly changed the subject. Anyway, you gotta bring Yukimaru back in one piece. Komatetsu clapped Kakugi on the shoulder, leaned in close, and whispered. And you better come back in one piece too. Yes, sir. Kakugi nodded solemnly. Chapter 33. They are all actors. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Kakugi took off. Yukimaru, after sniffing where Ibixi had been knocked out, barked and darted into the jungle like a shot. Kakugi, popping Hyorio pills to replenish his chakra, struggled to keep up. Ibixi had been gone almost an hour. If Yuuto Endo's speed is X and Kakumu's is Y, then the distance between them is X. Assuming Y is greater than X, how long until Kakumu catches up? But Endo Yuuto wouldn't just wait. He'd run to a safe distance, then slow down and enjoy his prey. Kakumu had no idea how long the chase would take. He just had to push himself to make Y as much greater than X as possible. He urged Yukimaru to go faster, several times. Yukimaru whined, giving him a resentful look, before reluctantly speeding up. Endo Yuuto might be fast, but he couldn't outrun a dog. I can. Kakugi, can. Ibixi, hang in there. Meanwhile, the Konoha supply convoy moved slowly. Short on manpower, Akimichi Choza created shadow clones to help push the carts. Since Kakumu left, Nara Shikaku kept glancing at Yuhi Kurenai and Umino Iruka, his half-smile making them both uncomfortable, except for Yamanaka and Noichi, who had a knowing look. Everyone else on the team eyed the three of them strangely. Akimichi Choza noticed, but figured he'd leave this mess to the other two. His priority was still pushing the cart. With that thought, he redoubled his efforts on the supplies. This is giving me the creeps, Iruka Umino thought, shooting a look at Kurenai Yuhi. Kurenai nodded in response. Finally, they couldn't take Shikaku's stares any longer. They called for a rest stop and, along with Yamanaka and Noichi, headed into the nearby woods. Once out of earshot, Shikaku Nara, chewing on a piece of straw, leaned against a tree trunk and said pointedly, "Quite the performance you two put on." Iruka Umino spread his hands, embarrassed. He's older now. Once he makes up his mind. Shikaku rubbed his forehead in exasperation. Iruka-sensei, aren't you worried at all? Nah, I've got faith in his skills, Iruka replied, trying to sound confident. The truth was, Iruka had backup plans, but he couldn't reveal them. Shikaku Nara, despite being his junior, was backed by the Nara clan and a key strategist on the front lines. He was a big deal. Some things were best left to Kurenai, being from the Yuhi clan herself, like this. What about you, Kurenai-sensei? What's your take? Nara Shikaku turned to Kurenai. Compared to the secret of Iruka, Kurenai was more direct. Right now, the mission is top priority. Besides, she said earnestly, I admire the kid and don't want to see him in danger. It's a shame he's so headstrong. Kurenai sighed dramatically, and Iruka looked annoyed that his parenting had failed. Oh, that's right. Iruka exclaimed, clapping his hands together. We owe you guys one. If Inoichi hadn't suggested using his interrogation team credentials to issue the mission to Kakugi, he'd be in serious trouble. Nara Shikaku spat out his straw with a poof, sighed heavily, ran his hands through his hair, and walked over to them, his eyes hardening. Enough, you two. How little do you trust me? You're both terrible actors. Silence hung in the air. Yamanaka and Noichi started to say something, but Shikaku silenced him with a look. Finally, Iruka said with a wry smile, sorry for putting you out this time. He bowed deeply to Nara Shikaku and Yamanaka Inoichi. Shikaku and Inoichi quickly waved their hands. Inoichi chuckled. I couldn't just stand by and watch a talented young ninja like Kakugi get into trouble. Next time, just tell us straight up, Shikaku said firmly to Iruka Umino. Seriously, Iruka-sensei, don't worry too much. Nara Shikaku patted Iruka on the shoulder. Personally, I completely understand Kakugi's actions. And the third Hokage is already upset that he didn't control the narrative in time. Shikaku looked up and sighed, and the others fell silent. Everyone knew what Shikaku meant. It was exactly what Iruka Umino and Kurenai Yuhi feared. When Kakugi came to Iruka Umino for advice, Iruka could have flatly refused him, not even giving him a chance to speak, but Iruka didn't want to discourage his son. Transporting supplies to the camp was the most important task. Even if Iruka and Kurenai agreed, they couldn't realistically send backup to rescue Ibixi. The end result would be Kakugi leaving the team on his own, facing punishment and ruining his desire to protect his comrades. The punishment could be minor or severe, and the chance of someone with malicious intent targeting Kakugi was small, but Iruka didn't want his son to feel abandoned, or to have a blemish on his record that could be exploited. Thanks to Shikaku, the situation was resolved, of course. Shikaku wasn't happy about being manipulated. So, you two put on a show to guilt-trip me into helping you out, huh? Nara Shikaku glared at Umino Iruka. We're having a barbecue at the Akimichi's when we get back. Deal, with all the fixings. Iruka agreed. Those guys are truly dependable. I really am getting old. Umino Iruka looked at Nara Shikaku and Yamanaka Inoichi and sighed to himself. They soon left the woods and returned to the team. Akimichi Choza looked at them curiously. Nara Shikaku and Yamanaka Inoichi walked over and exchanged a few words with Akimichi Choza. Moments later, Akimichi Choza gave Umino a thumbs up and smiled broadly. Akimichi Choza thought, I may not understand what those two are up to, but I know they won't let me down. Iruka's teeth suddenly ached. Kurenai Yuhi gave Umino Iruka a sympathetic look. Chapter 34 Ibixi. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Damn it, Yoko. Yuzawa, Ibixi, fall back. He's too much for you. Oh. Trying to distract me with students. Have it your way. Use. Damn. Where'd he go? I won't let you hurt my students again. Huh, let's see about that. Fire style, fireball jutsu, asterisk boom, star. Ah. Ibixi Marino woke up with a start. He looked around at the dark, damp rock walls, and the dripping stalactites. A cave? Was he rescued? No, why was he tied up? You're awake. A man's voice was flat, but Ibixi detected a hint of excitement hidden beneath it. The man approached, and Ibixi strained to see in the dim light. A face he'd never forget appeared. You! Ibixi exclaimed, his eyes instantly filled with rage. It was the sand ninja who killed his friends, Mr. Kimura, the one who wiped out the whole Kimura class. He, you remember me? Allow me to reintroduce myself. I'm Endo Yuuto. Endo Yuuto smiled strangely and gave a casual salute. He almost looked refined. I think I heard your teacher call you Ibixi, right? Let's get along, little Ibixi. Endo Yuuto stroked Ibixi's head, his eyes full of a disturbing affection. What is it, Yukimaru? Yukimaru, who had been running at top speed, suddenly stopped and whirled around. Kakugi asked what was wrong. Yukimaru looked up, barked a couple times, then started sniffing back and forth. Did they deliberately throw us off the scent? Kakugi wondered. Finally, Yukimaru picked a direction, barked, and took off again. Thank goodness for Yukimaru. Kakugi followed close behind, running faster. Huh, Ibixi, I said we should get along, so I'll untie you to show my sincerity. But no funny business, okay? Tui. Ibixi spat a wad of blood-tinged phlegm, but Yuuto dodged it. Ibixi had no idea what Yuuto was planning, but he had to show some respect. Oh, you're a naughty one. Your teacher would definitely punish you for that, wouldn't he? Endo Yuuto chuckled, feigning surprise. Oh, right, your teacher's dead, he. Shut up. Don't talk about my teacher. Ibixi shouted. Endo Yuuto shook his head dismissively and chuckled. Well, since your teacher isn't here, I'll punish you in his place. Endo Yuuto pulled out a kunai and cut the ropes binding Ibixi in 3 quick slashes. Ibixi blinked, confused. Regardless of Endo Yuuto's intentions, Ibixi immediately bolted for the cave entrance. Thud. Ibixi face-planted in the mud. Endo Yuuto withdrew a foot he'd stuck out to trip him. Weakened from being unconscious and tied up, the hard fall only made Ibixi's head spin. Hey, I told you not to move. Why are you so disobedient? Yuuto thoughtfully helped Ibixi up and laid him back on the ground, wearing a look of helplessness. I agreed to let you go, but if you don't cooperate, what can I do? Wait a minute. Endo Yuuto's eyes lit up as if he'd had a brilliant idea, and he practically bounced with glee. He pinned Ibixi's left hand to the ground with his foot and drove a kunai straight through it. The blade sank easily, as if cutting through butter, all the way through his hand and into the dirt and rock beneath. Ibixi's mind cleared as white-hot pain exploded in his hand. He struggled, and the tearing sensation intensified the agony. He almost passed out. Endo Yuuto repeated the process, and with each scream, he pinned the remaining kunai through Ibixi's other hand and both ankles. Endo Yuuto took a few steps back and smiled at Ibixi writhing on the ground. He frowned, as if he'd noticed something lacking. Ah, that's it. Endo Yuuto grabbed a rope, tied a noose around Ibixi's neck, and pulled it tight, anchoring the other end with a kunai. Now you won't move around. Perfect. Ibixi thrashed and moaned in agony. Endo Yuuto elegantly spun on one foot, bowed dramatically, and gave a casual salute. He smiled and said, Little Ibixi, are you satisfied with my sincerity yet? Ibixi gasped for breath, staring at Endo Yuuto without a word. Oh, what a shame. As if detecting Ibixi's lack of satisfaction, Endo Yuuto exaggeratedly recoiled, feigning disappointment. Suddenly, Endo Yuuto leaned close, his face inches from Ibixi's. Even if you're not satisfied, I've shown my sincerity. Now, let me punish you in your teacher's place. Endo Yuuto winked. Let's get along, little Ibixi. First, how about a new haircut? Kakugi, exhausted from running, signaled Yukimaru to stop for a break. Yukimaru flopped onto the ground, panting. Kakugi sat cross-legged and gathered chakra. 10 minutes later, they were moving again. After a long while, Yukimaru stopped. This time, he didn't spin around but barked straight ahead. Kakugi stopped. They were at a small clearing flanked by tall trees. There was a small hill among the trees, hidden by a thicket of bushes. The bushes were freshly cut, and heavy footprints led to a cave entrance. Found it. Those footprints had to be from Endo Yuuto carrying Ibixi. Kakugi was ecstatic. He picked up Yukimaru and kissed him hard. He told Yukimaru to wait at a distance, then carefully drew a kunai and approached the cave entrance. Did Yukimaru's barks alert Yuuto inside? Kakugi wondered, taking a deep breath. He had no backup, the cave layout was unknown, and there might be traps. It was best to scout ahead with a shadow clone, but if Yuuto saw the clone, would he kill Ibixi to vent his anger? Kakugi had to consider Ibixi's safety. He slowly formed a hand seal. He muttered, Earth style, Earth Dragon Jutsu. Kakugi sank into the ground, silent as a shadow. I hope Ibixi's still alive, he thought as he tunneled through the earth. It had been 5 hours since Ibixi was kidnapped, and evening was approaching. Chapter 35 Torture. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Heh, little Ibixi, your attitude is a real drag. Yuuto Endo took a long drag of his cigarette, eyed the almost finished but with a trace of regret, then mashed it hard against Ibixi's forehead. Ugh. Ibixi gritted his teeth, eyes wide, his whole body convulsing, but he was completely restrained. After struggling with every ounce of his strength, the pain of his limbs being ripped apart by kunai and the choking pressure on his neck, he was helpless to fight back. Okay, Ibixi, one more chance. The great Yuuto Endo is the eternal light shining on the village hidden in the sand. How would you translate that using Konoha's secret code? Ibixi just stared at Endo Yuuto, silent. Endo Yuuto looked back with a smile, waiting for an answer. After a long, silent stare down, Endo Yuuto suddenly acted as if he'd made a great discovery and exclaimed. Wow, Ibixi, it just hit me, you're a good-looking kid. The kunai in his hand traced the lines of Ibixi's face, his eyes gleaming with a strange fascination. Look at that rugged face. So tough at such a young age. He'll be breaking hearts left and right when he grows up. Let me help you out. Endo Yuuto grinned, and the kunai slashed deep across Ibiki's forehead, carefully avoiding his eyes and nose, and cutting his lips into a grotesque, four-petal shape. Yoo! Blood gushed down Ibiki's face. The excruciating pain made him thrash his head back and forth, but his eyes never wavered from Endo Yuuto. Tch, this is getting old. Endo Yuuto stood up, stretching, bored. He pulled out a hemostatic pill and forced it into Ibiki's mouth. Then, he pressed the kunai against Ibiki's head. Ibiki's once thick hair was gone, replaced by bare scalp, crisscrossed with shallow cuts and deep gashes. Thanks to Endo Yuuto's forced medication, most of the wounds had stopped bleeding, and even the few that were still oozing had slowed considerably. Ibiki wasn't about to be grateful for Endo Yuuto's mercy. He just wanted to die. Endo was a sicko. He wasn't trying to extract information. The torture was the whole point. The relentless torment had pushed Ibiki to the edge of a breakdown. All that kept him going was his burning hatred for Endo Yuuto. He wouldn't let Endo Yuuto see a flicker of weakness, not until his last breath. And deep down, a tiny spark of hope remained. What if his teammates saw him being taken and were on their way to rescue him? But as time dragged on, that hope dwindled, buried deeper and deeper within him. Endo Yuuto twirled the kunai over Ibiki's head, bored. Ibiki's face remained blank, unreadable. After enduring so much, Ibiki was surprised to find that he wasn't afraid anymore. Tch. Frustrated that he couldn't break him, Endo Yuuto plunged the kunai into Ibiki's head with a snarl. Ugh! The kunai jammed between the plates of his skull. Endo twisted the blade, grinding bone and spraying blood. Seeing that Ibiki still didn't cry out, Endo Yuuto scoffed and yanked the kunai out, sending a fresh wave of blood gushing down his head. Endo Yuuto grinned wickedly, then channeled flame into the kunai. Heh, my bad. I'm all out of those pills, so this will have to stop the bleeding. Heh. Endo Yuuto's grin widened as he pressed the burning kunai against Ibiki's open wound. Ibiki's eyes snapped wide, his whole body spasming. The pain was beyond anything he could express, the air filled with the acrid stench of burning flesh. Endo Yuuto inhaled deeply, seemingly drunk on the smell. Finally, the flames flickered out. Endo Yuuto stopped and looked down at Ibiki, who had finally passed out. Ha! Endo Yuuto sneered, tossed the useless kunai aside, drew another one, and slashed it across Ibiki's chest. Ugh! Ibiki jolted awake, the spreading blood instantly soaking his shirt. Endo Yuuto ignored his writhing, lit a cigarette, and inhaled deeply. Looking down at Ibiki, his expression had shifted from casual malice to something colder, more calculating. After all this, and you still haven't cracked. I've got to give you credit for that. But you don't really think anyone is coming for you, do you? That the cold words hit like a punch to the gut. Ibiki's eyes widened, and he strained to look up at Endo Yuuto, his ruined lips working soundlessly. Yes. No, you can't actually believe someone's coming, Ibiki. Ha. That Endo Yuuto was instantly convulsed with laughter, laughing until tears streamed down his face. Smiling no more, Endo Yuuto crumbled to the ground, sobbing. He cried like a heartbroken child. After a long time, the sobs faded. Endo Yuuto spoke evenly, his voice echoing coldly in the cave. Okay, someone is coming. But not for you. They're coming for me. After all, Endo's a traitor now. Endo Yuuto took off his forehead protector, ran his finger over the fresh scratches, and studied them intently. The moment my left hand was cut off, the village turned its back on me. Me. A jonin. And they just threw me away like that. So, instead of sticking around and being everyone's punching bag, waiting to die as some expendable grunt, I figured I'd become a rogue and live a little. Endo Yuuto sighed, as if talking to the world, to Ibiki, and to himself. And you, poor little genin. You honestly think anyone on your team would risk the mission just to save your hide? That Endo Yuuto looked down at Ibiki, his eyes gleaming with mockery. Ninjas are tools, kid. And you? You're just another throwaway. That the words cut deep, shattering Ibiki's resolve. His face went pale, he knew the team's mission. Compared to the urgent need to resupply the front lines, a genin's life was nothing. Then why, after all this time, am I still holding on? Ibiki lay there, feeling his heart sink into a bottomless pit. He was so tired. Why did he feel so heavy, even lying down? Slowly, Ibiki closed his eyes. Maybe it would be easier to just let go. Then, a memory flashed through his mind, someone's arm around his shoulder, telling him not to die so easily. No. I can't. Ibiki snapped his head up, struggling to speak, his mutilated lips finding strength. Huh. Endo Yuuto acted like he'd heard the most unbelievable thing. He looked at Ibiki with a sarcastic grin and shook his head. What a pathetic kid. Endo Yuuto chuckled darkly. After all this time, you finally told me a joke. Well then, as a thank you, I'll send you on your way. Chapter 36 Here I Come. You are listening at novelfull.audio. A kunai had pierced Ibiki's neck. His eyes slowly closed as a familiar face flashed in his mind. You get here eventually, but I might not be around to see it. L Dragon Fist. The ground beneath Endo Yuuto cracked as a figure exploded from below. A powerful uppercut connected with Yuto's jaw. The blow sent Yuuto flying backward. He caught a glimpse of his attacker, a face he knew all too well. It was Kakuzu. Kakuzu landed, twisted his body, and unleashed a kick that sent Yuuto spiraling through the air. Yuuto slammed into a nearby rock wall, his kunai clattering to the ground. The cave floor was a mix of earth and large, connected rocks. Kakuzu had gone to great lengths to sneak in undetected. His senses had picked up Yuto's parting words for Ibiki, so he burst from the ground to deliver the surprise attack. He deliberately kicked Yuuto away to keep the fight from endangering Ibiki. I'm here, Ibiki. Kakuzu said with a reassuring smile, turning towards the wounded shinobi. Finding Ibiki alive was a relief, but he needed to project confidence. Ibiki must have endured hell to survive this long. Don't worry. Kakuzu tried to force a smile, but it died on his face. Ibiki was a mess. Multiple holes pierced his head, a gash nearly bisected his face, and his chest and abdomen were crisscrossed with bloody cuts. His limbs were covered in burns and smaller wounds. Kunai pinned his hands and feet to the ground, each struggle tearing the wounds wider. A rope was cinched tight around his neck. Blood loss and oxygen deprivation had turned his face a ghastly white and blue. Kakuzu. Ibiki croaked, forcing a smile through his pain. That bastard will pay. A firestorm raged within Kakuzu. He'd never been so furious. Shadow Clone Jutsu. With a puff of smoke, Kakuzu created a clone to begin treating Ibiki while he advanced on Yuuto, now struggling to his feet. His hands blurred through a series of seals. He pointed at the unsteady Yuuto, rage boiling over. I'm going to kill you, you son of a bitch. Wind style, great breakthrough. Yuuto barely had time to react before the sudden blast of wind slammed into him, sending him hurtling backward. Boom. He crashed into the rock wall near the cave entrance. Kakuzu charged forward after releasing the jutsu. Yuuto was embedded in the rock, blood gushing from his mouth and nose. His twisted chest suggested multiple broken ribs. He was a horrifying sight. Never thought it would be you, Konoha brat. Yuuto feebly reached out a hand, trying to pull himself free. He looked up into the sole of Kakuzu's shoe. The kick sent him sprawling deeper into the pit, but Yuuto didn't care. His bloody, battered face cracked into a grin. Here for my head, huh? Kid. He stared at Kakuzu, defiance burning in his eyes. No. I'm here to save my friend. Kakuzu's tone was flat, cold, and seething with anger. And I'm not going to make it easy for you. Kakuzu pressed his kunai against Yuuto's eyelid, the cold steel promising a brutal end. Do what you want, kid. My head isn't yours to take. Yuuto chuckled, a strange glint in his eyes. That's not your call. Kakuzu said quietly. You underestimate me. Yuuto's smile grew wider, bordering on insane. Don't forget, I'm a jonin. Yuuto suddenly lunged forward, driving his head into Kakuzu. Caught off guard, Kakuzu could only scrape Yuuto's scalp as the man's momentum carried them both to the ground. Yuuto pinned Kakuzu's body and one arm, wrapping his other arm tightly around Kakuzu's back. They were locked together. Kakuzu stabbed Yuuto in the back with his kunai, but it was useless. Yuuto used his weight to keep Kakuzu pinned, his grip unyielding. Yuuto leaned close to Kakuzu's ear, a trickle of blood escaping his lips. Think I only set a trap at the cave entrance. Kakuzu's eyes widened. He struggled fiercely, driving the kunai deeper into Yuuto's back. But it was no use. Now, let me show you my original technique, courtesy of yours truly, Yuuto Endo. Don't forget I'm a jonin, kid. Fire style, fire serpent. Yuuto's remaining arm burst into flames, quickly taking the shape of a coiling snake. The serpent wrapped around them both, constricting tightly. You can't escape like this, heh. The fire snake, dragging its flaming tail, began slithering toward the cave entrance. Heh, I set a detonating tag trap there. Let's die together, kid. The blast will seal the cave, and Ibixi will be buried alive. The three of us will be together forever. Heh. Yuuto explained his plan to Kakuzu with the cheerful enthusiasm of a teacher. You're insane. Kakuzu roared. Ha, even as a rogue ninja, I can't let you take my head back to Konoha. I am the eternal light that shines on Sunagakure village, the great Yuuto Endo. The fire serpent was closing in on the detonating tag. Yuuto, ignoring Kakuzu's struggles, grew increasingly manic. His eyes shone with mad glee, until, boom, the detonating tag exploded. Yuuto was instantly obliterated. Kakuzu vanished in a puff of smoke, boom, the explosion shook the rocks above the cave entrance. Stones rained down, and in moments, the entrance was completely sealed. As the jutsu wore off, a large rock not far from Ibixi shimmered and revealed Kakuzu, lying prone on the ground. Who? Even though it was over, Kakuzu felt the lingering fear. That was too close. Thank God he'd had the foresight to create two shadow clones while treating Ibixi. One clone had started first aid on Ibixi while the other had engaged Yuuto. The real Kakuzu, disguised as a rock, had stayed hidden. Otherwise, he and Ibixi would be joining that psycho Yuuto 6 feet under. Chapter 37 Dad. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Boom. The exploding tag not only collapsed the cave entrance but also spooked every critter for miles. Birds scattered, and Yukimaru, who'd been waiting outside, charged the rubble, barking like crazy. Damn! A voice hissed, followed by footsteps. Yukimaru shut up as soon as he saw the figure, backing off. It was a guy in a Konoha forehead protector and a green jonin vest, looking seriously stressed. Umino Iruka, Konoha jonin and Kakugi's dad. This was a shadow clone Iruka had secretly sent after Kakugi took off. Technically, Iruka was breaking the rules. Shadow clones drain chakra from the original, which could weaken the escort team, but Iruka, worried sick about his kid, risked it, hiding the clone, hoping it would be a safety net. If everything went smoothly, the clone would just vanish after Kakugi finished the mission, like it never existed, but the explosion meant something went wrong in that cave. His son might be in trouble. Forgetting all about hiding, Iruka rushed to the collapsed entrance, afraid aggressive ninjutsu would make the cave collapse even worse. He pulled out a kunai and started digging through the rocks and dirt. His kunai hit something solid. TCH. He tossed the kunai aside, grabbed another, and started digging like a madman. Then he threw that one down too, shaking his head with a rueful smile, getting rattled. Are we? I'm a ninja. He took a couple of deep breaths, forcing himself to stay calm. He made a hand sign. Water release, water fang blade. 0.2 streams of water appeared in his hands, spinning into half-meter jets. The sharpness and power of the water, plus the speed, made them like high-quality drills. Let's do this. Iruka muttered, trying to sound confident, but the worry was plain on his face. The water jet sliced through the rubble like it was butter. Ikaku kept digging. Inside the cave, now sealed shut, it was pitch black. Kakugi fumbled for a small flashlight, adding a little light to the darkness. Yeah, they had flashlights in the ninja world, plus refrigerators and washing machines. The tech tree was a weird beast. In the light, the shadow clone was unwrapping Ibiki's restraints and bandaging him up. Kakugi stepped forward, holding down Ibiki, who was trying to sit up. "We're good, Ibiki. I took care of Endo Yuuto." He popped a hemostatic pill and a blood-increasing pill into Ibiki's mouth. Ibiki chewed, gratitude and worry in his eyes. He'd heard the explosion. "Don't sweat it. That idiot Endo died hugging my shadow clone." Kakugi stretched, trying to act casual. Then he pointed at the hole where he'd used Earth style. "Getting out is a joke. I'm an Earth style expert, remember? Piece of cake." He put his hands on his hips, laughing like a fool. "You just need some sleep. You'll be getting treatment from the medics at the camp before you know it." He patted Ibiki's shoulder gently. "Yeah," Ibiki mumbled, trusting and grateful, and closed his eyes. The torture and blood loss had taken a heavy toll. He was soon asleep. After a while, Kakugi and the clone had bandaged all of Ibiki's wounds. Kakugi frowned, looking at Ibiki, wrapped in bandages. He'd only learned basic first aid in the academy, and this was the best he could do. He shook his head, carefully lifted Ibiki onto his back, nodded at the clone, and pointed to the Earth-style hole. The clone went to the entrance, used Earth Dragon dive, sinking into the ground, pulling out a kunai to keep digging. Kakugi followed, Ibiki on his back. The clone made the tunnel big enough for Kakugi to move through. They were headed for the entrance. Kakugi felt something off. Yukimaru's chakra should be the only one above ground. Why was there another one at the cave entrance? But it felt familiar, like his dad's chakra. No way. His dad was with the escort team. He decided to let the clone go out first and check things out. The clone nodded and kept digging. A few moments later, he burst through to the surface, about to get into a fighting stance. He froze, gaping. "Dad? Huh?" Ikaku, still digging with the water knife, turned to see his son. His worried face broke into a huge smile. "Son, you're okay, The clone's expression changed, and with a poof, it disappeared in a puff of smoke. The main body's chakra was already stretched thin, and now it was gone. This clone had rescued Ibiki, used ninjutsu, and dug for ages. It was out of juice. Wait, what about Kakugi? Where was his son? Ikaku almost thought it was genjutsu. No, it was a clone. So, his son was still trapped. Without thinking, Ikaku kept digging with the water knife. "Hey, Dad." Kakugi's head popped out of the ground. Having gotten the memories of the clone, he looked sheepish. "Dad, what are you doing?" Ikaku was about to keep digging, but he stopped, turning to look at the kid popping out of the ground. They stared at each other. Dad, could you give me a hand?" Kakugi smiled awkwardly. "It's the real me." Chapter 38 Arrival. You are listening at novelfull.audio. TCH. This guy's not exactly giving me the warm fuzzies. Umino Ikaku was completely relaxed, a smile plastered on his face. He casually dispelled the ninjutsu on his hand as Kazuoki approached. "You got him?" Umino Ikaku's eyes immediately landed on the small figure on Kazuoki's back. "Yeah. But we need to get him back to camp ASAP for treatment." Kazuoki adjusted Ibiki on his back, making sure he was secure. "It was worse than I thought. I could only patch him up a little." Kazuoki added, a slight frown creasing his brow. "I see." Umino Ikaku frowned, taking in Ibiki's mummy-like appearance. He was out cold, damn sand ninja, Umino Ikaku thought, his expression hardening. Night was falling, and they immediately turned back. Kazuoki called out to Yukimaru, who trotted right beside him. Umino Ikaku suddenly remembered something and asked quickly. "Hey, what about that sand ninja traitor? Let's just say he won't be causing anyone any more trouble." Kazuoki shrugged, recounting the events in the cave. "Got it." Umino Ikaku nodded. he didn't say it, but Umino Ikuku had been worried about Kazuoki, and he admired his son's level-headedness despite being provoked. Too bad we couldn't bring back the Suna ninja's head. This mission's a bust. Still, he rescued his teammate and came out of it without a scratch, so that's something. As for getting chewed out for blowing the mission, Yamanaka Haichi basically gave us this gig as a favor anyway, and the target offing himself doesn't exactly count as a wartime offense. With that settled in his mind, Umino Ikuku felt the tension melt away. Father and son fell silent, focused on the journey. Getting Ibixi to the camp was the top priority. They moved fast, and by the time they reached the area where they tangled with the Suna ninja, it was pitch black. Because of Ibixi's injuries, they weren't able to move as fast as they normally would. Ibixi stirred once, and Kazuoki gave him some water before he drifted off again. They figured the transport team should be at the Konoha camp by now. Umino Ikuku stopped, turned to Kazuoki, and chuckled. A little further and you'll be at the edge of the camp's perimeter. You're on your own from here, kid. His expression grew serious, and he said sternly. Take it slow and easy. You hear? That on Umino Ikuku's face, there was a mix of worry, pride, and a touch of regret. It suddenly clicked for Kazuoki. This was his first solo mission, so that's why Dad was tailing me. Kazuoki, who had thought his father was being overprotective, now felt a surge of warmth. It's kinda nice knowing someone's got your back. He nodded to Umino Ikuku, acknowledging his instructions, and waved goodbye. Umino Ikuku nodded back, and as he was about to dispel the shadow clone, Kazuoki said with a grin. Dad, I'll be careful. Don't sweat it. As far as I'm concerned, you weren't even here. Heh, you little punk. I'll see you at the camp. Umino grinned and vanished in a puff of smoke. After walking a while, Kazuoki stopped and gently lowered Ibixi to the ground. He was still out cold. Kazuoki carefully felt his forehead and back. No fever or drop in temperature, so he felt a little relieved. He took a swig of water, choked down a soldier pill, hoisted Ibixi back on his back, and pushed on. The moonlight peeked through the clouds, illuminating the young man as he hurried onward, a small figure clinging to his back ahead. A snow-white ninja dog trotted, tongue lolling, guiding them toward the camp. They were getting close. The fatigue etched on the young man's face was slowly being replaced by excitement. Sweat poured down his cheeks, but he didn't bother wiping it away. Clutching his comrade tightly, he faced the night, the moonlight, and ran on. This scene was witnessed by someone unseen. Not bad, kid. A faint chuckle echoed, and a figure soared into the sky like a bird, disappearing into the darkness. Kazuoki was none the wiser. He just kept running. The Konoha camp gate was just ahead. Kazuoki quickly adjusted his forehead protector, pulled out his mission voucher, walked to the gate, and presented it to the guard on duty. The guard scrutinized the voucher, gave Kazuoki a surprised look, and waved him through. Kazuoki asked where the medical station was, thanked him, and hurried toward it with Ibixi on his back. After Kazuoki was gone, the two guards leaned in to whisper. That Umino Kazuoki? He's just a kid, right? Yeah, supposedly he took out the Sand Ninja Elite Jonin Kuroki Hayabusa when he was only 9. Unreal. Little did Kazuoki know, he was becoming something of a celebrity around the camp. As Yuhi Kurinai and Nara Shikaku reported to Commander Jiraiya, Kazuoki's name was spreading like wildfire. In the fight with Yakura's squad, Kazuoki had taken out a total of 8 Suna ninjas, including an elite Jonin, and seriously wounded another Jonin, a 9-year-old genin pulling off those numbers. Even Kakashi Hitaki, Konoha's famous prodigy who made Chunin at 8, hadn't reached that level. His actions after his teammate was kidnapped, chasing down the enemy and rescuing him, really grabbed people's attention. Officially, Kazuoki was on a mission to pursue the enemy. Unofficially, everyone knew what was up. Because of the White Fang situation, everyone was staying quiet about the personal connection behind the mission. On the surface, it was about the mission, but deep down, who doesn't admire a ninja who'd risk everything for a friend? Now that's the real will of fire, many old-school ninjas thought with a sigh. If Kazuoki had heard that, he'd have rolled his eyes. Will of fire, my butt. If it had been some random ninja, Kazuoki wouldn't have bothered risking his neck to save them. Ibixi was one of his few friends, After all, it wasn't until Kazuki walked into the medical station that he realized something was up. The medical station, still buzzing with activity from the sand ninja attack, was swamped, but the moment Kazuki walked in, the medical ninjas, no matter how busy, stopped what they were doing and turned their attention to him. After one of them identified Kazuki, he handed the patient he was treating to an assistant, took Ibixi, and started working on him. Right away, Kazuki stared, dumbfounded. Guess I'm getting the VIP treatment. Still, it was good that Ibixi was getting help so fast. After thanking them politely, Kazuki left the medical station. With Yukimaru leading the way, they found Umino's tent. Chapter 39 Camp. You are listening at novelfull.audio. As a veteran jonin in the village leading a small team, Ikaku Umino got some perks, like, their team of 4 had a tent all to themselves. Kazuki was surprised to find everyone awake, sitting or lying on their bunks, chatting. The second he walked in, 3 pairs of eyes locked on him. Well, if it isn't our little hero, the amazing genius Kazuki Umino, Komatetsu yelled playfully, grinning at Kazuki. Kenfang rushed over too, giving Kazuki a thorough once-over. Yep, it's definitely Kazuki alright, all parts accounted for. She joked, surprisingly. Yeah, let's get a good look. Kazuki laughed and pushed away Komatetsu and Kenfang's grabby hands. What's with you guys? You're acting like I'm some kind of celebrity. Ikaku Umino, who was lounging on his side on his bunk, chimed in, well, aren't you? You're a regular rock star around here now, Kazuki. A genin taking out 8 sand ninja, including the elite jonin Kuroki Hayabusa, and seriously wounding jonin Yuuto Endo. I heard even Lord Jiraiya was blown away. Umino raised an eyebrow at his son. What do you think about that? Kazuki was speechless. Now he understood why the medical ninja had reacted the way they did. Komatetsu nudged Yukimaru excitedly. Either way, you're a ninja legend now. Team Umino is on the rise, ha. Totally. Kenfang agreed, genuinely happy for Kazuki. Seeing this, Ikaku Umino couldn't resist raining on their parade. On the flip side, Kazuki, your name is now on Suna's hit list. And on the battlefield, enemy geniuses are priority targets. He turned serious, don't get cocky. You need to be extra careful out there, got it? Kazuki nodded solemnly, reminding himself to stay vigilant. Itsang definitely has me in his sights, and won't hesitate to take me out if he gets the chance. After a few more minutes of chatting, they all followed Ikaku Umino's order to hit the hay and settled into their bunks. Komatetsu said goodnight to Yukimaru and released his summoning jutsu. After a full day of fighting, everyone was exhausted, but they had waited up for Kazuki's return. The gesture spoke volumes. I just got a little too excited and talked too much. Kazuki tucked his ninja pouch under his pillow, settled comfortably, and drifted off to sleep. A warm smile played on his lips. The next day, Meiko Yuhi woke Ikaku Umino early for a mission briefing. Kazuki got up too, and after finding out where the interrogation squad was, he headed over. He needed to report the mission failure. When Haichi Yamanaka learned about Yuuto Endo's suicide, he was disappointed. A sand ninja jonin's head was still a valuable prize. Haichi Yamanaka regretfully marked Kazuki's mission as a failure, specifically noting the reason and adding no accountability. This was Kazuki's first mission failure. All task assignments had to be recorded, so Haichi Yamanaka had to follow protocol. Still, he was happy that Kazuki and Ibixi had made it back safe. Ultimately, the mission objective had been achieved. After thanking Haichi Yamanaka for his understanding, Kazuki left the interrogation unit and headed back to the tent. Ikaku Umino wasn't back yet, but Komatetsu and Kenfang were up, already grabbing rice balls and scarfing them down. Kazuki joined in. Team Umino was here to transport supplies and wasn't considered official personnel. Last night had been like a one-night stay in the camp, so they weren't assigned any patrol or guard duty that morning, and were allowed to sleep in. With nothing else to do after eating, Kazuki went to the medical station to check on Ibixi. Ibixi was still out cold. The torture he'd endured had taken a major toll. The medical ninja treating Ibixi told Kazuki the good news was that the treatment was successful. The most serious penetrating injuries to his limbs and head had been healed. The bad news was that Yuuto Endo's crude barbering and his amateur fire cauterization had left Ibixi with burns all over the top of his head, and he'd have trouble growing hair there again. Kazuki nodded in understanding and thanked the doctor again for his help. It's a shame Ibixi's going bald before he even hits 10. But in the original timeline, Ibixi was bald as an adult and wore a headscarf all the time. He wore the headscarf to cover the scars on his head. In the original story, Ibixi graduated at 10. He wouldn't have been around for the Sand Ninja raid, so he wouldn't have been kidnapped and tortured. I wonder if my time travel created some kind of butterfly effect that caused Ibixi to suffer early. I wonder if the torture Ibixi suffers in the original timeline will happen again. Kazuki didn't blame himself for Ibixi's misfortune, but he felt a bit unsettled. Unwittingly, this little butterfly of mine is changing the fate of those around me. Lost in thought, Kazuki returned to the tent. Umino stood by a pillar, looking serious. Komatetsu and Kenfang were waiting for him. Kazuki took a seat, his expression turning serious. Once everyone was there, Umino glanced around and began to speak slowly. This morning, Yuhi Jonin and I were at the command post and met Commander-in-Chief Jiraiya. Jiraiya told us that, due to the escalating situation on the front lines, our transport team is being integrated into the Konoha Ninja Army camp in the Land of Rivers. Administratively, Team Umino now reports directly to Lord Jiraiya, and receives orders directly from him. Given our long journey, we're allowed 3 days of rest. Combat assignments will be issued later. Umino looked intently at everyone, waiting for their reaction. Kazuki and Kenfang nodded silently. Then, they looked at Komatetsu. What the heck? As expected, Komatetsu was the first to speak, complaining, isn't this practically forced labor? I was planning to go back to the village to take the Chunin exam. Ahem. Ikaku Umino cut him off. Lord Jiraiya has the Hokage's authorization. In wartime, he can adapt as needed. Taking orders from Lord Jiraiya is like taking orders from the village. Everything is for the village. Whatever, Komatetsu muttered. He knew he had to accept the order. Could be worse, at least we can set up some traps, he said. The other side, used to Komatetsu's grumbling. Komatetsu was already 15 and obsessed with becoming a Chunin. Chapter 40 Assessment. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ahem. Ikaku Umino interrupted Kuma's thoughts, switching to an enthusiastic expression. Now for the good news. Congratulations, you've completed your first A-rank mission. And, congrats on becoming Chunin. That the A-rank mission shouldn't be a surprise. After all, the original B-rank escort mission ran into a surprise attack led by the Kage-level ninja, Yakura. It was a no-brainer to upgrade it, but what's with the Chunin promotion? Seeing their confused faces, Ikaku Umino smiled proudly. Like a magician, he produced 3 certificates of appointment and handed them out. Kakugi took his, reading it carefully. It was an official appointment signed by Jiraiya, Commander-in-Chief of the Konoha Ninja Army camp in the Land of Rivers, with Nara Shikaku, the headquarters chief strategist, signing off next to it. The appointment letter also stated it would be simultaneously reported and registered in Konoha village. In other words, Kakugi was now a full-fledged Chunin, compared to Kakashi, who became a Chunin at 8. Kakugi was already outstanding. Even at 9+ years old, Chunin could lead ninja squads and even genin teams. Though Kakugi was still on the young side, Kakugi was sure the promotion was based on skill, probably like Kakashi, but more than the change in rank, Kakugi cared more about improving his own strength. Wait, I'm a Chunin. I don't have to take the Chunin exams. Unlike Kakugi's indifference, Komatetsu held the appointment letter in disbelief, looking totally incredulous. There was excitement and joy on his face, but also a hard-to-hide sense of loss. Ikaku Umino patted Komatetsu's shoulder understandingly, comforting him. The Chunin exams are just one path to promotion, and probably the hardest. The real purpose of the Chunin exams has never just been about promoting the village's genin. More genin are promoted during wartime, or nominated by their teachers after building up enough merit, then promoted after a review. Being promoted to Chunin by the commander-in-chief during wartime just shows your strength has been recognized by the village. Ikaku Umino winked at Komatetsu. Sure enough, Komatetsu cheered up immediately, beaming happily. When Yakura led the raid, out of a squad of almost 30 people, only the 3 genin from Team Umino fought to the end, and they all grew from it, whether in wartime or peacetime. That's enough to get any genin promoted to Chunin. After all, if you're strong enough and have accomplished enough, why keep you a genin after an A-rank mission? What Ikaku Umino didn't mention was how impressed Jiraiya was with Kakugi's performance. He initially wanted to directly appoint Kakugi as a special jonin, but as soon as he said it, everyone in the room, including Nara Shikaku, started arguing against it. Ikaku Umino agreed it was too fast. Jonin was jonin, and came with not just status and recognition, but heavy responsibilities. Kakugi becoming a special jonin at under 10 years old would just be counterproductive. Eventually, Jiraiya was talked out of it, scratching his head and laughing, dropping the idea, but everyone could see how much Jiraiya admired Kakugi, even though he'd never met him before. As a result, Ikaku Umino once again enjoyed envious looks from everyone, unlike Kakugi's indifference and Komatetsu's excitement. Kenfang read the appointment carefully, his face growing a little serious. He looked at his teacher and Komatetsu, who were chatting and laughing, and Kakugi, who looked totally content beside him. Finally, he hesitantly raised his hand and asked. Umino-sensei, are we splitting up? Ikaku Umino was taken aback, then chuckled. Looking at Kenfang strangely, he asked. What makes you say that, Kenfang? Kenfang swallowed, trying to be brave. His tone was worried. All 3 genin in the squad have been promoted to Chunin. Doesn't that mean we separate now? The teacher leading the team has completed their mission. The students leave the team, and the teacher moves on to the next class. As he spoke, Kenfang lowered his head, forgetting to put his hand down. Komatetsu looked at Umino Ikaku hesitantly, his expression clearly asking, is that how it works? Ikaku Umino glared at Komatetsu, making him shrink back and swallow what he was about to say. Couldn't he see Kenfang was about to cry? Kakugi put his arm around Kenfang's neck, squeezing him tightly, and said with a smile, what, can't wait to be the squad leader. No way. Kenfang felt like he was sitting on a rocket. He practically shot away from Kakugi's grip, standing up and waving his hands frantically. I just don't want to be separated from everyone. Kenfang's face was red as he bowed to everyone. I'm sorry, I know I'm being selfish. Kuma and Kakugi are so good, you'll definitely become Chunin. Kenfang really looked like he was about to burst into tears. Whack! A loud smack landed on the back of Kenfang's head, stunning him in the middle of his emotional outburst. No need to apologize, idiot. Ikaku Umino stroked Kenfang's head and said, when do you ever have to apologize for wanting to be with your friends? Kenfang was the member of Team Umino who had been with Umino Ikaku the longest. Umino Ikaku sincerely hoped he could one day go back to his old self and be more independent. Besides, who said anything about breaking up Team Umino? Huh? Kenfang was stunned, looking surprised. It's just you 3 rookies. Of course you should keep following me, a senior jonin, you idiot. Ikaku Umino suddenly looked incredibly cool in Kenfang's eyes. Turns out he was just overthinking things again. Umino rubbed his forehead helplessly, gesturing to his son to explain. Kakugi looked helplessly at Kenfang, who had stars in his eyes, and cut off his fantasy. Kenfang, do you think there are enough genin in the camp to form separate teams? We can barely replace the team we lost in the last battle, right? Oh. When Kenfang heard that, he understood, and his face quickly flushed again. This time, he was just embarrassed. Right. I'm worrying too much, Kenfang covered the back of his head where Umino had smacked him and smiled sheepishly. Komatetsu, who had been silent and just watching, suddenly spoke up after hearing Kakugi's comment. What, Kenfang? You just like to overthink things. I knew this all along. Komatetsu shook his legs carelessly, 2 scrutinizing glances immediately locked onto him. Komatetsu's face froze slightly, but he kept shaking his legs. Another scrutinizing glare joined the first. That's the one thing I don't believe. Kenfang said quietly, delivering the finishing blow. Oof. Komatetsu clutched his chest dramatically and stood up sadly, seeming to hear the sound of a sharp knife piercing his heart. Ha ha ha. Seeing Komatetsu's mortification, Kakugi couldn't hold it in any longer, covering his mouth and laughing.